Hi, ladies and gents. It's Frank Carlyle. It's the show. I've got two great guests on. I've got my regular guest, the international artist, Anthony Brown. He loves his history, by the way. He loves it. And I've got the great astronomer, Gerard Gilligan. And we'll be talking about space and everything else. And I'm going to show Gerard something. What I took last night, I was made up. I was watching the Starry Night. I streamed Greenland, and some of the magnificent Starry Nights there are absolutely amazing because there's not really any light to disrupt anything. You know, it's a sort of, just the sky is just full of stars. It's not like our polluted skies, where light stops anything, when you look up, seeing loads of stars. Anyway, I've got Gerard on. It should be good. It should be good. I just want to know a few things as well. But I'm going to show something, as I said, what I took last night. I was proud of myself. I sent it over to Jay. I said, will you show this? And he said, yeah, okay. He's made up. He said, yeah, show that. So I made up what I took last night, actually. And I'm going to bring in my first guest, which is my regular one, Mr. Anthony Brown. Good evening, Anthony.
Good evening, Frank.
How are you?
Thanks, mate. Thank you.
Good. I'm made up with that, How's Lainey? Is she good?
All good. All well into the Christmas spirit, Frank. Yeah, good.
And all the little brownies, are they okay?
The little brownies who tower over us now because we're hobbits in our own house. But yeah, they're great. Everyone looking forward to Christmas. It's kind of a family wind down now at the moment.
This is what it's all about, isn't it? The big day. The big day. This is what it's all about. And
it is what it's all about, Frank. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I'm just going to say hello to a couple of people here. Even Frank, hope you're well. Was watching a program the other night about the Wellington Roos, how it used to be. So sad the way it's been left to rot away. Yes, indeed. And Charlie Wood, he says, hello, Frank and guests. Hello, Charlie.
Hello, Charlie.
I'm just going to bring in, I have to bring in my sponsors. And my sponsors is Gap Painting Services. And if you need anything done, get it done by these lads. They're absolutely brilliant. They're fully insured, fully time served. If you're at OAP, please get them in if you want something quickly done. If you want any painting or decorating, anything at all, get them in and you'll have a fantastic discount. If you're an NHS worker, another special discount. Get these boys in and they are super. They really are super. So get them in. And they're the sponsors of the Frank Carlyle Show. And I love them to death. Anyway, I'm going to bring in Gerard now. And there he is, the wonderful Gerard. Good evening, Gerard.
Hi, Anthony.
Good morning. Oh, good afternoon. Good evening, Gerard.
Good evening.
All right, time lapse.
Yeah, I think it's the moon in the background. I think that deceives everybody.
All right.
Lovely starry night.
Space. Yeah.
I'm intrigued about your Greenland thing, Frank.
Do you know what? Do you want to see it now?
I can't wait to see your result. Yes, please.
And there it is. I took that last night. I was watching. It's you can see this. You can just about see all the stars. And as I was watching it, all of a sudden, this thing appeared. So I brought it back. I brought the shot back, And there it is. So it took, I paused there and took a quick photograph of it. What do you think of that, Gerard?
Right. Well, it's interesting, Frank, because this week we've got the Geminid meteor shower.
Okay.
It's possible you've picked up a meteor there. I'm not too sure, but it's fairly likely because they peak midweek this week, 13th, 14th of December,
Right.
and they're one of the best meteor showers during the year.
Wow.
Wow.
Well, I was very proud of that because, as you can see, you see a little bit of clouds at the bottom. You can see the mountain range there, and but the original stream and the stars were so magnificent.
Yeah.
They
Well,
really were.
everything's coming together for the Geminid meteor shower because it's new moon, I think, tomorrow. And with the bright moon out the way, as you were saying before, if you can get away from city and town light pollution to a fairly dark sky sight in the next few days, then obviously, try to avoid going on your own, going perhaps with a group of people. And you may see quite a number of these meteors.
Oh. But it has to, be, a clear night, really, doesn't it? Because
Well, yeah, the weather has to play its part as well, but you never know. You might see something through a gap or of clouds. But unfortunately, with astronomy, the weather always has to play its part as well. But we carry on.
is it that picture I took last night? Yeah, I was just watching. I was just watching it, Gerard. I was just, streaming, as I said.
Yeah.
And not that I wasn't like looking out for anything in particular. I wasn't looking out. I just love to see it, looking at the stars, because what I do about Greenland, there's a couple of airports. One is named Lullasat or something like. They've all got funny names. Lullasat Airport,
Right.
and it's a small airport. But when I'm not looking at the airport directly, because I look at the back of the airport. Because there's two cameras, one there and one at the back of it, and at the back of it is more clear. Everything is clear, and then there's another thing called Nuuk Airport, which is the capital of Greenland. And, again, there's lots of light, obviously, with being in an airport. And you can see stars, but very few and far between. But when you look at the back of these airports, wow, it's unbelievable. But this Lullasat, I think it's called that. That's where I took that, at the back of the airport. As I said, I was just sitting there looking, and bang, there's is it a comet or what? I don't know what is it? What is it? Is it a comet? Oh,
it's possibly it could well be an airplane. Let's not dismiss that. You've said that there's those two airports you've mentioned. It could well be a Geminid meteor, and they're called the Geminids because they radiate from the constellation of Gemini.
yeah.
That's where the point they seem to come from. And they're associated with a comet. And if you imagine the way a boat leaves a wake in water, a comet will leave a wake of particles through space. And when the Earth encounters those particles, you get meteors falling through the atmosphere. And of course, they can be very, very small pieces of rock, very tiny, but even so, they can burn up in the atmosphere and make a streak of light. And we call them meteors. But if they survive and you can actually find them on the ground, we then call them meteorites. Then you can actually handle them. And it's very important we collect those, because we can determine where they've come from within the solar system. And the other thing I wanted to mention to you, obviously you've taken the image in over Greenland. Well, even this time of year, with Greenland being so far north, you can get the northern lights as well. Yeah, and they can be even just a greenish glow on the horizon.
Yeah, that's right.
You won't see them from the UK, perhaps because of the activity of the sun might not be that energized. But in Greenland, you can more or less see very faint glow, perhaps nearly every night.
Do you know what, Gerard? I've actually watched them. I've seen them. I've seen them on there. I was going to take a picture myself. But anyway, but that's definitely not a plane because it came down very fast, you know, and it just disappeared after a few seconds. Because
in that case, sorry to interrupt. In that case, I think it's probably a meteor. Perhaps well be a Geminid.
Yeah. Oh well, I'm glad that it's the first thing I've ever taken. You know, took a picture. You know,
many congratulations. You're a meteor observer, Frank.
Thanks very much.
Fantastic.
Can I just say hello to some of these people who are saying hello to us?
Yeah, sure.
JK, he says, evening, Frank, Anthony, and Gerard. You'll never walk alone. Isn't that lovely?
Good evening.
I love
Good
that.
evening to you.
And Mark Kinnis is exactly the same. Evening, Gerard. He
Evening,
did say
Mark.
evening to you as well, you know, Anthony. He did say Shane McGowan, and they had us 3 pints for us. Evening, lads. Lad, 3 pints.
Evening, Shane.
Thank you.
And Norma, it's not one of these, you know, he uses his wife's thing, you know, his name's not Adam, to be honest. Like,
Evening, Norman.
And he's even Frank, Anthony, and Gerard. And it's good. It's really good. And Mark Kinney says, can you see the Northern Lights quite good in Scotland? He asked, that's you. He's asking you there, Gerard.
Well, yes, Scotland sees them more times, really. There are two particular times in the year you can see them at they're probably the best and the best chances, and that's October, November-ish, and then March, April. It's to do when the sun and the earth are in certain positions. However, the sun has been very active lately. And the Northern Lights have been seen as far south as Gibraltar and the Mediterranean coasts. So it's been very active recently. And I can tell you a story. 2 friends of mine went to Alaska. This is a number of years ago, and they didn't really see much. And they came back to Warrington where they lived, and they saw one of the best displays ever. That was March 1989. It was a tremendous display of Northern Lights, and it was seen overhead in the northwest of England, Liverpool as well. And it was one of the best displays I've seen. There was greens, purples, I think blues were seen in the sky, and you get like a green Rosetta type shape, which was seen overhead, and that was actually moving down south. But it was all to do with the activity of the sun. The sun was very active that particular year, and I think we're in more or less the same sort of situation now.
I was asked to ask you a question.
Yes, Frank.
The total eclipse, any idea?
Well, the next one is going to be over the United States on April the 8th next year, 2024. That's a total eclipse. And one of the best places to see it is on the Mexican-Texas border. There's quite a number of people there, but I think it also goes to cities like Dallas, and it starts off as far north as Canada, and then the shadow moves down to the south of the United States, I think ending over New Mexico, Texas. And I'm not too sure. I can't remember. I think it's about 3 minutes long totality. But
Well,
you've got to go. You've got to go
Go-
to certain places at a certain time to see total eclipses, and I don't think any of it can be seen from the UK, from England. You'd have to go to the United States.
Oh, so that's what I was going to ask. Won't there be like a little bit of a eclipse here? You know, where like a partial eclipse of the sun?
I don't think so. I think there might be one later in the year where we have that situation. And it's the same for a lunar eclipse. You can have a total lunar eclipse somewhere and then it'll be partial here. I think that might be the case again. I'd have to check and perhaps come back at another show for you and let you know.
No, that'll be fantastic. That'll be absolutely fantastic because this is what I like. What's the what's I was watching something. I was watching something about Mars.
Yes.
Mars. You know, I don't know whether they're conspiracy theories or anything like that. I really don't. But what I did find fascinating, that Mars did have water on the planet. I'm talking millions of years ago now. Mars did have water on the planet. Water holds life. It does hold
Yes.
life. I'm not saying, I know it's a dead planet now. But this Mars thing that's been going around now for a couple of years or whatever, this little rover and taking pictures and whatever, it's finding I don't know whether it's a trick of the sun, their sun, the Mars sun, beaming down, but you see the likes of faces and like pyramid shaped things, and what they're saying is like that they could be ancient civilizations that built these pyramids and built like this sort of human face. What's your take on that, please?
Well, first of all, to answer your question about water, there's definitely been water on Mars in the distant past. And you're quite right. It's been millions of years ago since that happened. They found traces of chemicals, geological chemicals on Mars that can only have been formed when water was present. They've also found definite landscapes and features that there's actually two rovers going on. There's Curiosity and Perseverance. They're both still actively moving around Mars. And they've found evidence of when water flows through a landscape and leaves layers, that kind of thing. They found definite evidence of that. And the orbiters, which have been in orbit around Mars, have also found those landscapes where there's been a flood of water, and similar to the landscapes on Earth. So there's a comparison between the two. So to answer your first question, definitely water did exist on Mars. And that's why those two Mars rovers are there. They're probing for perhaps evidence of microbial life, perhaps, that depends on water. Maybe even a definite evidence, say, fossilized microbes that formed, but they would have to be fossilized. So that means that they were in existence millions of years ago, similar to what fossils we find on the Earth today. Now, the pyramids in the face, they can actually be tricks of shadows and sunlight, depending on the angle that photographs were taken of. And the famous photograph of the face was, I think, taken by the American space probe Mariner 9. And when a newer spacecraft went over, the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, it had much more sophisticated cameras, and the face turned out to be just what's called a part of a shield volcano, and the photographs revealed that it was just a trick of the light, shadows at certain places at certain times, causing what appeared to be a face, but it wasn't. It was just a trick of the light. And it's the same for the pyramid shapes as well.
So it's all trick of the light. I'll tell you what, you've got me watching. I have to watch these things, because when you come on, what else I was watching, which fascinated me, this, is that Venus, right, is hotter than Mercury. It's hotter, the surface is hotter for some reason, yet Mercury is nearer the sun than it is Venus.
Okay. With Venus, if you think about it, it's covered in a very thick layer of cloud. It's it appears now to what we're very worried that the Earth might actually turn out to be with the climate change. And because it's covered in very thick cloud, a blanket, if you think about it, heat and light can't get back into space, so it gets reflected back down to the ground. And of course, it's got active volcanoes as well, so that's where the heat comes from. And I think the surface temperature on Venus can actually melt lead. If you could put so if you could put lead on the surface, it would melt it very easily. And I think very high temperatures are needed to melt lead. With Mercury, of course, one face of it faces the sun all the time, and another face faces away. So you've got two extremes of hot and cold on Mercury. But Venus has got very, very high temperatures, which are constant because of this blanket of cloud.
It's amazing, isn't it, really? When you look at our little planets, we were talking about the dwarf planets, weren't we? Well, they call it a dwarf planet now, Pluto. Right. But you don't resonate with that at all, do you? Because you still call it a planet. Which I do myself, to be honest.
If you're referring to Pluto, I think we discussed last time that I was brought up with 9 planets in the solar system, and Pluto was one of them. But unfortunately, because of its size, and it's got a very erratic orbit compared to all the other planets, it's been reclassified by the International Astronomical Union as a dwarf planet.
That's nuts, that. Well, let's see. Aaron says, Frank, you're not actually on the moon, are you? That'd be great. Me, Frank, on the moon. I thought it was in the Mir the last time you were on, but it wasn't. It was in the space station.
You were in the space station, yeah.
Hey, listen, do you know, I was watching someone, Buzz Aldrin. I was watching Buzz Aldrin in an interview, and he said a fascinating thing to me, not to me, in the interview. I just went, wow, can this be right? And what he said, I think you know what I'm going to say. He said that we were followed by a bogey. He called it a bogey. And it was deleted off, the ground control, what he was actually talking about. Can you elaborate on anything like that, please, Gerard?
Can you repeat? He was followed by a what? Sorry.
A bogey. He said he called it a bogey. He said that they were followed something, and they were followed for 3 days.
Okay. I think I know this story. Well, this is my take on what I know about this. If you can if you remember, when they're on the way to the moon, they have to extract the lunar module from the stage 3 Saturn V
yeah.
when they're on their way to the moon. And of course, when the service and command module power its way from the Saturn V, they turn round. But of course, the lunar module is protected by 4 coverings while the Saturn V is launched, because it's very fragile. It's a very fragile spacecraft. The lunar module is the one that lands on the moon eventually. And they're called slow panels, 4 of them. And it happened on, I think, on Apollo 11 and 12, that because of the velocity effects of going powering towards the moon, these floor panels followed the spacecraft to the moon. But I think most of them, the other 3 perhaps, fell back to Earth and were burnt up. But one of them may or may not have followed the Commander lunar module to the moon. It's quite possible. Because another thing they do is that they deliberately crash the remaining part of the Saturn V, the stage 3 as it's called, which is no longer needed. I think they can fire its engine again, and then it gets deliberately crashed onto the moon, because in later missions did that, because they left moonquake recording equipment on the moon's surface. So they wanted to cause a man-made moonquake so that these instruments could be calibrated to record actual moonquakes. So that's what they did. So to answer your initial question, I think what the bogey that Buzz Aldrin saw, or they thought, was perhaps a slow panel, or it could have been material from when the slow panels open out to reveal the lunar module, so that the command module can dock to it.
So do you reckon that, we said for 3 days, so could anything, say like space junk, as they call it now, space junk, he's going up there, and it's hard for me to do all this because I'm just can't coordinate properly. I'm planning. Right, so hang on, where am I? There, right. So there's a rocket. There's the Buzz Aldrin's rocket going up there, and you've got debris here. Could the force, or the I don't know what you call it. Could that drag something along with it, if you know what I mean?
It's quite possible. The bogey quite well have been the stage 3 of the Saturn V rocket. That does actually follow them to the moon, because I say that they deliberately crash that part of the rocket onto the moon, and that's very possible what he saw. But it could have been other space debris that's followed them after the launch, because if you think about it, the Saturn V rocket was very, very big, and there was lots of different components. But as they travel to the moon, different parts of the Saturn V do their job, and then they're discarded. So, and remember that it's only the command module with the 3 crew inside that comes back to the Earth. Everything else is discarded because it's no longer required.
Well, everything, you're talking about space here. Like, you can go back to Yuri Gagarin, when he went around the Earth, the first man in space, and the likes of these lads going up into, to the moon, put it that way. You even had was it Glenn who went out of his module and walked around, the first man to walk in space or something like that. Was it Major Glenn or someone like that?
It was Ed White did the first American spacewalk.
Okay, not well, Ed White. Then you have, the lads who go up to the moon, and I'm talking about everything has to be spot on. It has to be precise. It has to be right there. It's so precise. And the most marvelous thing I've seen, like, with all this space travel and everything else, was where they had the camera and they set it up. They set it up on the moon, where you've got the module there ready
Yes.
to take off, and you just see it going. I thought that was one of the most fantastic things I've ever seen, ever. And yet, it takes off, and to get to I call it the mothership, to dock to bring them back to Earth. I think that was absolutely amazing feat of engineering.
Well, I think the later missions, the scientific lunar missions, Apollo 15, 16, and 17. Don't forget they had the lunar rover, which was fitted with a TV camera, a color TV camera, and they had the ability, even when the crew had blasted off from the moon and going back to the mothership, as you say, they were actually able to control the lunar rover, the camera as well, and move it around the moon just for a few hours while the lunar rover batteries were still active. So they used that camera on the lunar rover to watch what they call the ascent stage of the lunar module blast off and go back into lunar orbit and dock with the command and service module.
It's incredible, isn't it? The way, and you've got the ground crew, haven't you? They're looking after everything.
Right.
One little mistake and it could be the end, couldn't it? Really.
And don't forget, you constantly hear this all the time, but don't forget this was over 50 years ago now. 50 years, the technology at the time. You constantly hear about the computer that helped them land on the moon. Well, the everyday electric kettle has more computer power in it. Your mobile phone has 100 times more computer power than their little computer that they used to land on the moon. We are talking nearly 60 years ago now, so it's really incredible.
Yeah. Do you think that, again, I was asked another question a few weeks ago, I was talking to someone, and they said, do you reckon that, this century, they will get on to places, Mars or Titan?
Oh, I think it's quite possible. They are planning to land men and indeed women on the moon by 2026, perhaps 2027. So they'll be back on the moon then. Yes, America is gearing up to do that again. There's a crewed mission planned for this time next year called Artemis 2, which will go into extended lunar orbit and test all the equipment and the technologies and what is required. But they won't actually land on the moon. That will be the mission afterwards, Artemis 3. And they are really gearing up to perhaps get some kind of lunar base established. And then that will be the stepping stone towards Mars and perhaps even beyond. And I can see it. We are only, 23 years into this century, and there's many more years to go. So I think it's quite possible. If they won't get to Mars this century, definitely the moon. The moon is the stopping off place to the rest of the solar system.
Well, what about one of the moons? Is it Jupiter? Is it Titan?
Titan, yes. Yeah. I think that one of the priorities they may do is actually for any journey out to Jupiter, you are talking 6 to 8 years. You'd have to be in space for that long just to get to Jupiter. And then if you've got to come home again, it's another 6 to 8 years. So it's a long time in space. You're going to need water, food, of course, oxygen. So there's going to have to be technologies, perhaps propulsion that will get you to Jupiter very, very quickly. So
so the technology has to be way far ahead than we are today, no matter how you look at the technology.
Because we don't know what we're expecting to get to.
Yeah. One point I wanted to make is that if you remember John F. Kennedy's speech about going to the moon, he said, and that was in the early 1960s, he said that he said that we would go to the moon with materials that had not been invented yet. And by the time the moon landings happened, which is in 1969, of course, some of those materials and technologies had been invented, and they were able to accomplish his goal of landing a person on the moon and returning them back. And that's probably the same scenario now, that to get to Mars and Jupiter, those propulsion systems and materials are not yet being invented, but they will be sooner or later.
Wow. Is there any, like we've got the Hubble, we've got other now cameras and whatever. Why did I do that? I don't know why I done that.
That's all right. I do it all the time.
But anyway, it's funny, isn't it? You know, when you saw it, well, I was on the phone to someone. You do that. But anyway, what do you reckon? What we know today. I remember Valentina Tereshkova was the very first lady in space. First woman in space. The Russian girl, the Soviet girl, and we've had lots of girls, especially in the shuttles, going up into space and going around and coming back and spending a few days up there. What do you reckon that the next? You're talking about a moon base. You're talking about a moon base. Would the I forget what is it called, the ocean of something, where it's more or less flat? Would they have to land somewhere where it's more flat and away from craters if they want to put up a moon base?
Yeah, I think you're quite right. The site of a moon base would have to be carefully planned. The landing sites for the Apollo missions, as we've been discussing 50, 60 years ago, they were always checked and mapped by unmanned lunar probes before they sent manned crews to the moon. So that, for one thing, they wanted to be in constant communication with them, so they were always facing the Earth. And it was also a question of sunlight. They wanted to make sure that they were bathed in sunlight all the time, and it didn't go dark, because of the way the moon phases are.
Yeah.
So even if they put a moon base, say, on the far side of the moon, it will go dark for about 20 to 30 days, depending on where they land. So they've got to be careful where the moon base is going to be, and it will have to be, I think, possibly devoid of deep craters and mountains, and perhaps a flat plain. I
was just going to ask you, say, like, hang on, let's see if I can do this. Let's see where I am. Say, we're looking at the Earth there, right?
Yeah.
You said that's the moon, right? And deep spaces, say, like, where am I? It's coordination's terrible. Say, like, deep spaces that way, and Jupiter, and all the other little planets. Do you reckon that they would have to put like a massive antenna and cameras and whatever pointing that, hang on, that, say it, coordination's terrible, pointing out towards them for like a little hop, if do you see what I mean?
Well, that's you're possibly quite right. They might have to put, say, communication devices and satellites so that they can keep in. But the further out into space you go, the longer signals take. For example, even Mars, which is not relatively close to us in terms of the universe, it can take a radio signal 8 minutes to get to Mars and then 8 minutes to get back. So there's going to be a bit of a communication lag. So you can imagine what it will be for Jupiter. You might have to record a message and then send it to the Earth, and you might get it a few hours later.
I think that's amazing. It really is, because the pictures that are coming out now, from the pictures, they're from another planet.
Yeah,
it's incredible. And the Voyager, you said that there was 2 Voyagers that went so 174 and 176, I think. And they
1977 they were launched.
Oh, 1977.
Yeah.
Voyager 1 and 2 was something like that.
That's right, yes.
Now, there's one that's in deep space now. Deep space. And I think that's remarkable for something that's still traveling. I can't get my head around it. I really can't get my head around it. And do you believe what Einstein... Go on.
I'm sorry. I was just going to add to what you said about the Voyagers. I think Voyager 2, to send a radio signal to Voyager takes just over 30 hours. And then to respond, it takes another 30 hours for the radio signal to come back to Earth. And they are using fairly big radio antenna, some of them as big as, Jodrell Bank near Manchester. One of the biggest is Parkes in Australia. And I think there's a couple in the United States that they use. And they're scattered around the world so that they can keep in constant communication with Voyager, because of course the Earth rotates. So these dishes have got to be spread out throughout the Earth so that they can keep in communication. And the further out you go, the longer a radio signal will take to get to you and then back again. So it's not going to be easy.
Can I tell you something, Gerard?
Yes, Frank, please do.
I think you might know it actually, but the very first radio broadcast that was ever sent in the entire world was sent from Liverpool. And it was by Sir Oliver Lodge to his wife. And it was sent from Liverpool University in Brownlow Hill down to the old Lewis's store. And he said, I'll be home, my dear, I'll be home later. That's what he said. That was the very first radio broadcast. Yet, that radio broadcast, that signal, went out into space. Yeah. And it's still traveling today.
That's
How about that?
There's constant radio signals that have gone out into space. So, there's the joke is that an alien race will someday find one of the first episodes of Coronation Street or something like that. Because
Frank Carlyle Show with you on it.
TV signals they go out into space, so you'll get that situation. Yeah,
that's incredible. I'm going to ask Anthony, what's your? Do you know, like I've said about the Hubble. I've just mentioned about the Voyager being out there. I've mentioned about Sir Oliver Lodge's, first radio broadcast that's gone out there. Yeah. What's your most fascinating thing about this space thing?
I am gloriously still learning as we go. I know very little other than what came to us via media and the odd encyclopedia. So to hear Gerard talk about, I was fascinated the last time we spoke that the original footprints on the moon, which were left after the first landing, are still there, still visible. And so the concept of what we get here, like what we're getting at the moment, we're getting rain and sleet and snow and then sunshine and that kind of diversity in weather. So the planets don't get that, Gerard? You don't get that at all?
Yeah, it's just that's particularly associated with the moon, but Mars does have a weather system. It does have winds. It doesn't have rain. It doesn't rain there, but it does have winds which can churn up dust and that, and the entire planet can be covered in a sandstorm of dust and that for many months, and you can't see any surface material. So Mars does have a weather, and of course the outer planets, Jupiter and Saturn, they're gaseous, so they have cloud belts and they have storms. So they do have their own forms of weather depending on where they are. They're being in the colder regions of the solar system.
You would have a rainfall, which would explain what you were talking before about the signs of water.
Yeah.
Or is that like a condensation thing? Or?
Yeah. Well, with Mars, the conditions there may have been particularly what we call, we call it the inhabitable zone. The Earth is it's jokingly referred to as the Goldilocks zone. It's not too hot, and yet it's not too cold. And it's possible that when the solar system was finished forming, that the Earth and Mars were in that particular zone. But unfortunately, Mars went further out beyond that. All the water that it had evaporated and dissipated into the space. It just evaporated away. And luckily enough, the Earth stayed where it was, and we were able to, water formed, and life came from obviously water molecules and developed and evolved over many millions of years. But unfortunately, and to answer your question, Mars may have just kicked itself the wrong way into the colder regions of space, and all the water evaporated.
Well, you mentioned, didn't you, as well, about acid rain on Venus.
Yes, that's
so,
right.
Life couldn't exist on Venus, simply because of the air pressure, simply because of the acid rain, simply because things would melt, even lead. So nothing at all could live. And what do you think of Titan? I mentioned Titan. And do you reckon that's more like, say, like a space exploration, that they could actually put something on there, to survive, like a space station, put it that way, like a moon, a moon base. Maybe they could have a Titan base, because they reckon that it has an atmosphere. I think I'm right. It has an atmosphere that would suit us.
Well, Titan is I don't think it's suitable for us, Frank. It's mainly made up of methane. The atmosphere, it's got liquid methane on the surface as well. But we did send a probe to Titan. I think it was in 1994. The probe was called Huygens, a little probe, and it was parachuted down onto the surface by a bigger probe called Cassini, which went into orbit around Saturn. But there is a moon, I think, of Jupiter, not Jupiter, sorry, Saturn, Europa, one of those moons. I think it's Jupiter's moon, and it actually is pushing out geysers of water into space, and it's got a layer of ice all around it, literally icebergs. And they might send a probe to Europa to drill down through the ice, and below it might be liquid water, oceans, which could well contain life. And
Do you
that's
know
a
what?
plan that to do.
I'm sorry there. Like I was saying, Titan, and it was Europa about the water, and the drilling.
Yes.
But it went completely out
Yeah,
my mind.
which is one of Jupiter's satellites. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's one of Jupiter's satellites, and they've saw the geysers of water photographed, and it's going out into space, water molecules. So it's liquid water ice. So that's the possibility there might be some primitive aqua life below the ice that can survive very cold temperatures.
Yeah, molecules and things like that. Absolutely amazing. Gerard, what's the next best thing, what we've got to look forward to within the next, well, you mentioned about in the next couple of years, going back to the moon. What's beyond that? Any plans or anything else?
Well, I think me being an astronomy and space flight enthusiast, I think I'm looking forward to going to the moon. As I say, the mission in a year's time will go around the moon. That's something to look forward to. And then the lunar landings again, perhaps in 2 or 3 years after then. That's something to look forward to. And it'll be a mixed crew this time. It'll be both men and women landing on the moon for the first time. They're not going to go back to the same landing sites. One of the plans may be to go to a place where there is a crater, which part of it is constantly shielded from sunlight, and there could well be some liquid water in the shadow parts of a crater on the moon. So they want to investigate that if they can, and that's a possibility of a future landing site.
I think that's fascinating. Gerard, you will come on again and give us
Frank,
an update on certain things, will you please, in the new year?
Yeah, it's always a pleasure and an extreme honor, Frank, for you to have me on. So thank you.
No,
and yes, I'll come back when you...
Honestly, people think that it's absolutely amazing because you're amazing, but space. Anthony, come on. What was you saying, Anthony?
Absolutely fascinating just to be amongst you and listen to that, Gerard. I mean, most of what we know, we see either on a TV screen or in a book, and it doesn't particularly make it real. But the way you're describing there, in the many, many years and the time that it takes to send a message, it's like it makes you thankful to be alive. I mean, we were all witnesses of 1969, the moon landing, and hopefully we'll see, as you're describing, another stage. But I realize,
moon base, yeah. Hey,
well, yes,
Gerard,
Frank.
Just before you go, you're talking about a moon base. Now, before I ask you that, I've got to give you one of the greatest achievements, I think, about the space race and all this, whatever it is when we sent out, and I mentioned this a couple of times to you, Gerard, when we sent out that probe to land on a comet, and it took went millions of miles, and it landed on. That's one of the greatest achievements ever in any space race. Even the man landing on the moon. Honestly, that is one of the greatest. That is the greatest to me. But I forgot what I was going to ask you. Oh, right, yeah, right. I was getting all excited about that. probe going out and landing on that comet. Anyway, or meteor, whatever it was.
It was a comet.
It
Yeah.
was a comet. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I don't know me comet from my meteors, unfortunately. But anyway, how long do you reckon before you leave us? How long do you reckon it would take to build like the first phase of a moon base? How long do you reckon? Or have they got that already in mind? How long it would take?
Oh, I think if it's not going to be very easy. These are my thoughts. What they'll have to do is, before they send any humans to the moon to occupy a moon base, they'll probably send the raw materials to build it first, and then also the ability to the supplies, water, food, and then they'll build. They might use the materials already on the moon to build the building materials, but they're going to have to build. They're going to have to take some building materials to the moon initially, and just enlarge it as you go. It's like building building estates on the earth. You build one small house, and then you build another one and another one, and then blocks of flats. It's that kind of idea. You do it bit by bit, but it'll take. It may well take 50 years before there's what you would call a proper lunar base, and they'll expand it by putting radio telescopes on the far side of the moon, so they'll have no interference in the Earth. And
that's what I meant before when I was trying to say.
So they'll do that, and they might extract materials from the moon to bring back to the Earth. But it'll be that kind of thing, maybe. But if they spend a lot of money on going to the moon and establishing a moon base, the politicians might argue that we need something back. We need the materials back to
say like the likes of Britain, for example, the UK, right. And they'll say, well, listen, if we put money in it, we'd want one of our lads to go up there, or one of our lads to go up there.
Well, it's happened already with Tim Peake on the International Space Station, so it'll be a similar thing to that. So if Britain puts money into going back to the moon and setting up a moon base, they'll want British astronauts to go, both men and women, to go to the moon. Yes.
But the only thing I'm worried about with the moon and the bases and everything else is putting weapons up there. That's the only
thing. I've not personally seen anything, but it's a possibility, I suppose. Some kind of defense mechanism, but they'll have to probably defend themselves on the moon base from meteorites. The moon's got no atmosphere. Meteors won't burn up. They'll come straight down to the surface of the moon. So they'll need some kind of protection that way. So that's the kind of defense they'll probably need.
Yeah. But anyway, Gerard, it's been brilliant as usual. Thank you so much.
As I say, it's a pleasure and an honour. Thank you.
No, I'm amazed off that you like me little picture of me, me thingy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well done. Yeah, well done, you. I'm going to put you to the test. You need to do more of those. So carry on doing that.
Yeah, because as I said, even to the people out there, try and stream Greenland, around the airports, and just have a look at them, because what you see out there is millions of stars. Absolutely fantastic. It's really fascinating. And anyway, again, Gerard, thank you so much. I'll be seeing you in the new year.
Okay, yeah, and thank you, Anthony. Nice talking to you too.
Thank you so much.
And
Wonderful.
can I wish you both a happy Christmas and clear skies for next year?
Yeah, thank you, and all the best to you as well,
Okay.
Gerard.
Thank you. Take care.
And you, bye-bye. What a lovely man he is.
Absolutely fascinating.
Yeah,
Just
it's
fascinating.
great.
Brings a whole reality to stuff that doesn't make sense, because we see it and we've been bamboozled with movie after movie after movie, science fiction since we were kids, and it's like what's real and what's not real, and to have someone who explains it the way Gerard does, then it's like
It is. It's mind-boggling. You can't get your head around it, really. When you get, the nitty-gritty of everything. That's why I was trying to explain. If they did land on the moon and they're making a moon base, they'd have to have somewhere where it'll what I'm talking about is the communication link with deep space, albeit that they've got the Voyagers out there, which is out of our, I don't know, solar system, which is in deep space now. So you could imagine what will be coming back, the information. But I couldn't say, do you know what I didn't like to ask him? I'm being honest. About UFOs. I couldn't ask him that,
We'll ask him next time, but it's like
I seen one, and it never had wings. It didn't have a tail. It didn't have anything, and it was cylindrical. It was incredible. An incredible thing that I was actually looking at, so. But I didn't like to ask him,
Well,
I'll tell him again what I actually saw.
Yeah.
I will, I promise you that. I will ask him when he's on again. But anyway, got to have a break. We've gone over the break, so I'll see you after the break.
I'll be there, Captain.
Aye, sir. Jim.
This is the Collegiate of Shaw Street, a very famous place of learning. Today, there are fancy apartments, but at least it's still here. And just around the corner from the Collegiate is its neighbour, SFX, St Francis Xavier's School, and the two of them, the two wonderful buildings, are linked to our next hero. It's a funny place, Liverpool. You'll always find a place of tranquility, and this is Whiteley Gardens here on Shaw Street. Peace, birds singing, beautiful day. Now that's what George Gabriel Curie longed for in the trenches during the 1914-18 conflict. George Gabriel Curie, born Liverpool in 1896, and he was educated at St Francis Xavier's School, Salisbury Street. Then at Stonyhurst College, Ribble Valley. Now, he was an apprentice in the cotton trades in the Albany in Old Hall Street. And when war broke out, On the 4th of August 1914, he was commissioned into the Pioneer Corps as a second lieutenant. The Pioneers, what's the definition of the Pioneers? They never get the credit that they richly deserve. Now, what the Pioneers did, they actually repaired the roads. They went out into no man's land and dug the trenches for an advancement of the Allies, brought the ammunition up, even the barbed wire. The Pioneers' job was really hazardous because they came under immense fire continually. And on the 8th of August 1916, at a place known as Arrowhead Copse near Gilligan, the Battle of the Somme was raging. Curie and his men advanced into no man's land under heavy enemy fire to dig trenches for the advancement of Allied troops. He completed his mission, but with heavy casualties and the wounding of a CO. He went out again into machine gun swept no man's land in order to bring back his wounded CO. In broad daylight, in full view of the enemy and extreme heavy fire, he brought back his commanding officer. This conspicuous gallantry earned Curie a Victoria Cross. He was promoted to full lieutenant from second lieutenant. He was transferred from his regiment to the Royal Flying Corps as a pilot and promoted to captain. So what happened to George Gabriel Curie? Well, he survived the war. He came back to Liverpool and he wanted to go back into his own cotton business in Old Hall Street, but unfortunately that had collapsed. So he had no job. So what did he do to provide for his family? He opens a chippy called the Chip Pan around the corner from St. Francis Xavier's School, his old school, Brunswick Road. And there he was, happy as Larry, serving his customers with his fish and chips. Then the Second World War broke out and he enlisted yet again. And what did he do? He actually landed on the 6th of June 1944, D-Day. What a survivor this man was. Survived the First World War, the Second World War, and finally he did get his call. And in 1956 he died, and he's buried at St. Peter St. Paul, Crosby.
Wow. What do you think of that?
Absolutely, just amazing story. What an amazing man.
Yeah, absolutely. Because Curie, you know, as I said in the film, Curie and the Pioneer Corps never ever get mentioned. What it reminds me of is the you know, when the Western Americans went over to the West, they were all the pioneers going over to the West.
Yeah.
They didn't know what kind of environment that they were going into. And yet, these the Pioneer Corps, they had to bring up the ammunition. They had to dig the trenches, to be honest. They had to go and dig the trenches. They had to bring the barbed wire up. They had to bring the munitions up. Yeah. It was incredible what they actually did.
Yeah.
It was incredible. And they hardly ever get a mention, unfortunately. And yet, you know, George Gabriel Curie, he was the man. He was the man. Won a Victoria Cross. He won one of these, which, you know, I'm very proud to show people. And that's what he won. The Victoria Cross. Isn't that great?
Yeah. Yeah.
I won that when I went to Goodison Park. I won a VC going to Goodison Park to watch a derby game. But no, I'm joking, Melanie. Oh, you're joking. But you see what I mean, you know, about these lads. And one of the greatest lads is a portrait that's behind me that you actually did.
Yeah.
That you actually did of Wilfred Owen. And I'll be talking about Wilfred in a moment or two. I just want to mention this, and it's going on tomorrow night. It's going on tomorrow night. It's the oldie, and it's the Christmas do. Rocking at the Oldie Christmas show in the hall. Mick Roach is on. The Uke Stars, they're on. It's going to pace you. It's going to be great. It's just the connection, NBNW, whoever they are. It's just going to be great. And there it is tomorrow night. And it's up there at Copy Lane, Aintree, free entry. There's a full free Xmas buffet as well. So get up there and meet your old mates and meet new mates and have a good time there at the Oldie. You'll just have a great time. You really will up there. And so that's up there. That's up there at the Oldie tomorrow. And there it is, Copy Lane, Aintree. And there you go. There you go. Try and get up there if possible. And there's, I reckon, that's one of the, isn't that an image of everything? And that reminds me, what it reminds me of John McCrae's poem, where it says, let me try and think, it says, the poppies blow between the crosses, row upon row, to mark our place. And in the sky, the lark bravely singing, scarcely heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. A few short days ago, we lived, saw sunsets glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie here in Flanders fields. That's, you know, it's an unbelievable poem and after he wrote that, John McCrae, he was a doctor. He was a doctor over there. He was a Canadian doctor, and he was soon killed right after that poem.
Wow.
You know, so these lads, you know, they were amazing. They were an amazing bunch of lads. Very brave, very, very brave. Went over there to do their duty. And
Yeah.
it's just, I'll just, Mark Kinnish says, let's just say, great video clip, Frank, as always. Thank you, Mark. And as he says, Wilfred Owen, amazing man, absolutely. And when I said about going to Goodison Park and getting the Victoria Cross, keep it level, shit. What was you doing in Goodison Park? I was winning that. I was winning that, keep it. I was winning that for us. It just shows you, though, doesn't it? It's amazing to think, you know, when these poets write the poetry, it's what it was, especially with this lad, Wilfred Owen. That's not him there, but when you look at the soldier, and that's Rupert Brooke. And I recite that particular poem, to be honest. I recite that. But we put it up there, and these lads are going over, and I've got to have a contrast. There's a binary opposite what I'm going to say. If I should die, think only this of me, that there's some corner of a foreign field that is forever England. There shall be in that rich earth a richer dust concealed, a dust whom England bore, shape, made away, gave once her flowers to love her ways to roam, a body of England's breathing English air, washed by the rivers, blessed by the sons of home. And think, this heart all evil shed away, a pulse in the eternal mind no less gives somewhere back the thoughts by England given, her sights and sounds, dreams happy as her day, and laughter learnt of friends, and gentleness in hearts at peace under an English heaven. When you take that poem that Rupert Brooke had actually written, that was meant that in music halls, for example, that was read out. Yeah. And it was read out not by like a soldier or by the master of ceremonies, it was read out by actresses. Get an actress in. And that was to touch the nerve of, people who were reluctant to join the army, to go and fight for the country. So it was all what you call patriotic. One of the most, it is the most patriotic poem of the First World War. And he had actually taken it from John O'Gorn's speech of Richard III. He had actually taken that. He's seen that speech by Shakespeare where he says, this sceptred isle, this precious stone set in the silver sea, this fortress built by nature for herself against the envy of less happier lands, this blessed plot, this earth, this realm, this England, this teeming womb of royal kings. This is, and he looked at that poem, he looked at the John O'Gorn speech, and it was so patriotic, and he, I'm going to do something like that. And that's what he wrote, if I should die, think only this of me, that there's some corner of a foreign field that is forever England. And he wrote that because everything now was all based on, it was actually based on patriotism. And you get these lads who went to war. You had the soldier poets who went to war. And they seen the horrors. They had actually seen the horrors of war, Anthony. And what you got, besides that, and that particular poem there, you seen the horrors started to come into it. And it wasn't so, it's not, I'm not saying it's unpatriotic, but you start to question, you're saying, well, what are we doing here? Why are these people being killed on a daily basis? It was frightening. Bombardment day in, day out, 24/7. It was horrendous. And yet, you still had, these lads writing, this great patriotic poem. And I mentioned a lad, Mackenzie, and he wrote a poem about a lad out of his company who died because he went to see his dad, and he seen his dad. He only had one son. That's all he had. there was no one else. He never had daughters. His wife had just died as well, so he was on his own. And his lad had died. And his name was David Jones. And he said, so you were David's father and he was your only son. And the new cut pizza rotting and the workers left undone because of an old man weeping, just an old man in pain, for David, his son David, that will not come home again. So, he wrote that poem. And the man now was on his own. He'd given up his life. He'd given up his own life because his son had been killed.
Yeah.
He'd given his life. So he was just, he gave up on life, in other words.
Yeah.
And that's why he wrote it. 3 weeks after he wrote that, he was killed. He was killed. So it's these soldier poets were looking at the horrors of war.
Yeah.
None more so than the lad that you had, had painted.
Yeah.
And that's him, Wilfred Owen. And when you think that Wilfred Owen, he was actually born in Oswestry.
Yeah.
But he went to Birkenhead. He was a clergy. He went to the church. He was there in the church in Birkenhead.
His church is not too far away from where we live, Frank. Yeah.
So it's the same church, yeah.
Yeah. Is home 2 up, 2 down? We'd call it. Is still there, blue flagged. His dad had something to do with the railway. Worked for the railway, didn't he?
Yeah.
I think. And when Hamilton Square railway station opened, it was kind of a big deal. So he was offered a job from where they were living previously, to come up. I don't think his mum enjoyed it. They're only here for a few years.
Yeah.
But yeah, the landmarks that he would have been associated with are still here. But I came across him. I was never taught him in school. We were never taught anything about that, about the war, first, second. We were taught an awful lot of useless information. But when I started art school when I was 16, there was an older guy who was at the art school, and he gave me a book of Wilfred Owen's poetry. And as a naive young lad, I read bits of it, but there was nothing to back it up with. So I just kept it with me. And some of the poems were quite profound. Anthem for Doomed Youth stayed with me for many, many years. And much later on, in the past 15 years, 10 years, our nephew was a serving soldier in Afghanistan. We would have conversations with him when he was able, when he was on leave. And he would tell us that one of the most hurtful and painful things for the lads who were serving and who were over there was that when they got hold of an English paper, there was not much mention of them, and he didn't want articles of heroic lads, brave, brave, brave. They just wanted to be thought of, because they were over there doing, as you've described, the most horrific job you could ever find yourself in, nightmare. And it felt like for a while that no one was really interested. And we took that on board, and we would more and more see it on media, and the reports were all about the deaths, not about the lads' well-being. And so we decided that we should, in our little way, do something to commemorate the armed forces from across generations, and certainly the boys and girls who were fighting then. So we talked about devising a program which we called the Soldier Story, and the portrait of Wilfred was to be the lead piece, because as John Lennon with music, it's the most he's the most well-known person, and it was a case of that would be the first piece, and then we'll get all of this behind us. We had so many plans. We have friends who were in scrap metal, large. I wanted a warship. I wanted objects of things that were once destructive to turn into something pleasing to look at. We had it all planned out as a visual experience where people would be educated. We're going to involve you in it. We talked to Jimmy McGovern, and Jimmy was going to write a script for something. I imagined a large white room with like museum artifacts around, Wilfred being one of them. So there would be about 20 portraits with lives, and Wilfred's made up of his own poems and his own dreams, and his colleagues, his friends, his family, as would all of them have been. And basically we got to a point where there was not, and it wasn't about money. Lainey and I were just doing it. We were just going for it. And Jimmy would have been in it, and I am so sure that you would have been in it with us. It was just about not too long after we'd done the 100 heads, and I kind of think that it was overkill for some people. This particular launch, which you've got the pictures up there, the council, and a wonderful guy. I don't know if you ever met him. He was in charge of St. George's Hall for a while, Graham Boxer.
Yeah, I knew Graham, yeah.
And Graham left St. George's Hall to work in the Imperial War Museum. So he was kind of very supportive of this. Come on, do it. And it was going to grow by bit by bit by bit. But Wilfred kind of took off on a life of its own. The canvas there with it, the hands, this thing of the hands, was my perception of the people we lose, we never really lose touch with. And I painted that, and it's the same size as Wilfred. We put it up on display, and we invited people to write on it, comment, leave a name of their loved ones who were serving in the army, on the armed forces, or the police forces, or the fire brigade, or who'd been lost, grandparents, whatever. And that was the night we launched it in the Anglican, and it was, that canvas was filled 2 days later with names of people who came in and wanted to leave something. So every time Wilfred goes out on display, I paint a blank canvas, and we invite people to leave their thoughts or memories, names, anything on it. And they've all been filled over the years. And we, as you've just described, and that talk you gave, it's like we owe these people so much, and it's easy to forget that, you know, life goes on, and life's so fast and busy, and we're concentrating on different things, but the enormity of what they do and the loss is immense.
What they went through. And this is why, you know, Easy Sided to write about the horrors of
Yeah.
war. And you mentioned about Anthem for Doomed Youth. You've only got to look at the title, Anthem for Doomed Youth. What passing bells for these who die as cattle. Think about the opening lines on that.
Yeah.
What passing bells for these who die as cattle. And that's what it was all about. They were just being sent. You know, the passing bells was the church, you know, and the toll of the bells.
The death.
As they were going, yeah, of course, it was the death knell. As they were going, it was the death knell for those lads going. What passing bells for these who die as cattle, because it was synonymous with a slaughterhouse, and that was France. And you know, so it epitomised really the exposure of death. That's what it was.
Absolutely.
And,
In the way that what we would call a regular journalist wasn't allowed to put out.
no, certainly weren't.
So I mean, we're still talking. I think Wilfred and the like was so powerful. They were just almost God sent to beam down and do this, do what they did. But it took, I believe, something like 22 years after his death, which was like 7 days before the end of the war, before his work came out. And I think his mother and various colleagues, Siegfried Sassoon, lobbied to get this out. And it took 20 years after he died before the universities clocked on to people should read this. And then we mere mortals get to see it, you know.
Well, funny enough, you mentioned Siegfried Sassoon.
Yeah.
I met Siegfried up in Craiglockhart, which is in Scotland. And it was for wounded men because he was wounded, Wilfred Owen. And they sent him up there. And why? But Siegfried Sassoon wasn't wounded. And because he was an officer and came from a privileged background, they sent him up there to see a psychiatrist because he lobbied MPs. What's going on here? Why? Because his brother Michael was killed, you see. And, you know, we went up there and he said he went to Parliament and he was lobbying the MPs. He was saying, look, you've got to talk about ending this war, not carrying on, not escalating it. This is wrong. People are dying every day.
That was regarded as treason.
Yeah. If that was been you and I, we would have been, you know, up against the wall and shot. Yeah. But they had to send him to Craiglockhart, and that's where he met Wilfred's up here, and met Sassoon and Owen, and he was amazing. You know, Owen admired Sassoon. He admired him, and the sad thing is, which was the irony, really, he signed himself out. Sassoon, he signed himself out because he said you can either go back to your regiment or you're going to stay here for the duration of the war. So Sassoon signed himself out, but on a condition that he wouldn't mention anything about stopping the war or going lobbying MPs or anything like that.
His opposition.
Sassoon did. Yeah. He did. He signed this document. So he never ever. He survived the war. He survived it. You know, so he was one of the great men as well. And you know, he became a pacifist, and he was always going on and on and on about, no more war. This was after, obviously after the war had ended in 1918. He strongly advocated that there be no more wars between anybody. But Wilfred Owen, on the other hand, he wanted to write a poem when he was talking to Sassoon, and he said, I want to write something that is against the war. And as you quite rightly said, when he had written his poems, they weren't published until 1930, 31, which was shocking. It was shocking to keep them away, the poems, because it gave an insight into the horrors of war. And one particular poem, which was horrendous, that he's actually had written, was Dulce et decorum est.
Yeah.
And it goes like this: bent double like old beggars under sacks, knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we curse through sludge, till on the haunting flares we turned our backs. Men marched asleep, many had lost their boots, bloodshot, all went lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue, deaf even to the hoots of gas shells dropping softly behind. Gas, gas, quick boys, an ecstasy of fumbling, fitting the clumsy helmets just in time, but someone was yelling and floundering like a man in fire or lime. As under a thick green sea, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. If in some smothering dreams you too could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in, and watch his white eyes riding in his hanging face, like a devil sick of sin. If you could hear at every jolt the blood come gargling from the froth corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cud of vile incurable sores on innocent tongues, my friend, you would not tell with such a zest to children ardent for some desperate glory the old lie, dulce et decorum est pro patria mori. And that, the ending is the irony of the poem, because there was a great Roman poet called Ovid, and he had written a poem how patriotic it is to die for one's country. But that poem, the content of Wilfred Owen's poem, of Dulce et decorum est pro patria mori, it wasn't sweet and honourable and patriotic today. It was absolute agony.
Horrific.
Torturous, yes, and horrific. And that's the way he put it over. And yet he was deemed as a poet that had no conscience. He had no conscience. He didn't give a toss about anything else, about the lads dying. Yet he did. He was saying, look, this is what's happening to them.
That's in every word he wrote.
Yes, of course.
And still now, here we are, talking about that. And war goes on, and it's there's no good war on any level in any country for any reason. But this is, he was painting the truth.
Yeah, he did paint the truth.
Saying, no, this is what's going on. Don't believe that,
the horrors of war. That's what he painted. The horrors of war, that lad. Yeah. And when when you think of these people, these warmongers who don't want anything like that, and that's why they left it until 1930, 31 to get them published, because they thought, well, there's no more wars going to happen. And then, you said something at the beginning of this when we were talking about certain things, and you said we learned nothing of these when we were at school. And I'll tell you for why we learned nothing. when we were at school, war hadn't been over, you know, that long. It was still hard in the memories of people. It was still hard in the memories of people. So they decided not to like teach these particular things. And when I was at school, as a little child at school, you know, besides learning the nursery rhymes and then going on, but by the time we got a little bit older, all we were learning were, I suppose you, Anthony, was kings and queens, like Henry VIII, you know, and these people. That's what we were learning. We weren't really learning about. What we did learn about the war was, it was, I've always said this in lectures, the victor always writes the story. So what you actually read is by the victor. We read by the victors, you know, these wonderful books, and we thought wonderful books. But it wasn't like that at all. And when you pick up a poem by the likes of the great Wilfred Owen or Siegfried Sassoon, you know, these lads to give you the horrors of war, that's the proper war. And that's how you get your information.
Absolutely true. They were in no one's pocket. They were telling the tale as the tale is, you know, the truth. And we have it across history, and thank God we do. And you've mentioned and your wonderful program you did about Guy Fawkes, which was an eye-opener for me. But obviously the hero of that story for me was William Shakespeare. And he too had his dangers. If you step the line a little bit more, then the cotton on and he'll silence you. You know.
But it's like today, you know, I'm not going to go into this, but you've got like the Palestinian war and with Israel, and the unfortunate thing, what's coming out all the time is Hamas, and there's nothing about the Palestinians, and you can actually go to jail if you show a Palestinian flag. So again, we've always followed the narrative.
Yeah.
Every time we followed the narrative. And you mentioned about the 1605 gunpowder plot. Now, the gunpowder plot, you could grow up thinking, you know, oh, it was great. You know, we all, that Guy Fawkes, he was really bad. He's a bad dude. He wanted to blow up Parliament. Yet when you look at it, he didn't.
Well, that's the book I grew up with. And then to you, it's like, you know, they turn the tables. He's the bad guy because they've got to generate a believable script, and they do that by, you know, it's like the old cowboy movies where the bad guys all wore a black hat and the good guys wore a white hat. So it's like, oh, Guy Fawkes wore a black hat, so he's a baddie. So we,
and that's the way it was. And it was only through the likes of Shakespeare who sat in the courtroom and went, "Oh, this is wrong, this," because, you know, obviously people were talking afterwards about the transcript of the trial, and he obviously investigated and said, "Well, there was only one scribe, and that was Cecil himself."
Yeah.
And he had no one else. And he had no one else to take any confessions. Now, we know today, and it's been proved, that every confession from the plotters were bogus. They were made up by Cecil himself. And Cecil himself was the only scribe in the courtroom. And that's why Shakespeare, you know, is very, very astute, was our Willie, because he went, "I'm going to do something about this." And that's where there's, you know, Macbeth's tragedy speech. incredible, you know, when he actually put, and all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, brief candle, life is but a walking shadow. A poor player that struts and frets is hour upon the stage and is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Now, all our yesterdays is history. That's what he meant. It's history, and the shadows of spies, you know, amongst us. And that was Lord Monteagle. He was talking about Lord Monteagle, right? You know, because he was a spy for Cecil, albeit that he was a cousin of, and he was a Catholic as well, Monteagle, albeit that he was a cousin also of Sir Francis Tresham, one of the lads, one of the plotters. And when he mentions a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and is heard no more, that's him saying that when these lads were in the witness box or in the dock or whatever you call it, and they were saying, no, we didn't want to blow up the king, we didn't want to blow up the parliamentarians, we just wanted to demonstrate, you know, that we're still here, we want emancipation. That's what they were saying. Yet, what Cecil was writing, well, yes, yes, I wanted to injure the great king, and I hope God forgives this miserable person for trying to injure the king and kill the king and the parliamentarian and all this crap that was going on. Yeah. And he never wrote that at all. He never said that at all. But he said it. And that's why he said it as a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. And that's why he mentioned an idiot, which was Robert Cecil. It's a tale, a story told by, he made it up, a story is made up, told by an idiot full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. And that's why he said, that's how he got over his thing about the gunpowder plotters, that it was a load of nonsense. Don't take any notice of what you're reading about the transcript of the trial. And as I said, I've always said Guy Fawkes was the biggest scapegoat of the 17th century, 1600s.
Yeah.
And when, you know, it's strange, you know, and when we were kids, I always remember a few years ago, someone asked me to do the gunpowder plot. So I went to this particular, it was absolutely shocked. I went to this place years ago, and I was like that. I said, how many Catholics are in here? And loads of hands went up. They all went like that. I said, you all celebrate Bowie night? And they all went, yeah, that's great, you know. And by the time I finished, I said, you know, I said, you celebrate? And he said, no, we don't. You know, because it's, you know, bonfire night, or bomb, that's what it is. It's good fire. And the good fire is burning. Catholicism, the doctrine of Catholicism. Every Catholic is on that fire, you know. The Guy Fawkes, when they throw Guy Fawkes on, they're not just throwing Guy Fawkes on, they're throwing every Catholic in the country on the bonfire, the good fire. And, you know, and when the, you know, the fireworks go off, it's a celebration because they've got rid of the Catholics.
Not for us anymore. I tell you what, I might find a painting of Cecil or copy one and set fire to that next time. But no.
But that's the way it was, honestly, you know. And these people, and I just laughing my head off, and they say, "What are you laughing at?" I said, "Well, I'm not laughing at you, you know. It's just your reaction because people don't realise what they celebrate and what they shouldn't celebrate."
And
And he went, yeah, you're right, aren't you? I said, all right.
And the bogus stories that come out.
And the bogus stories, yeah. But again, as I mentioned, we've always followed the narrative. We've always followed the victor. Everything was written by the victor. And I had a cracking book. It was that thick. It was, it was very big. It was one of those ones, very big, that wide. And it was written by, believe it or not, a Swiss general. And it was brilliant. And I'll tell you for why. He was neutral, you see. And he balanced everything out. He balanced the whole of the First World War out. And he put letters in. He actually put letters, written by soldiers. And, from both camps. And even one letter, I'll never forget it. I haven't got it now. I lent it out to someone and never ever got it back. And, you forget who you lent it out to. And I think it's mean when you lend something out and you don't get back. Nevertheless, this letter, and it was written by an ordinary German soldier to his mother. And he said, I feel sorry for the British Tommy. I feel sorry for him because all they keep doing is coming up towards our lines and we're just shooting them. And we don't know why their generals are sending them up towards our lines to be annihilated. That's what he wrote. He actually felt sorry for. Now, you wouldn't get that in any other thing. And you wouldn't get it.
You're going back to the Wilfred Owen thing, isn't it? And
of course.
They're living in the middle of this horror, this monstrous thing where it's they just want to pray to God and get home to their parents, to their wives, to whatever, and all of this monstrosity is going on around them, and so they've got no reason to pretend one way or the other. We're the greatest. They're just honestly speaking, as they see, you feel sorry for the British because they're in a no-win situation, and then we can readdress that by saying the generals like Haig, who sent them over the hill, were, if not slightly deranged, certainly on the way, and the same in any warfare. And whatever title they give it, collateral damage, whatever, it's lives, men's and women's lives, families, and the ripple effect goes on and on and on. Here we are, two friends talking about something that happened way before we were born, but the horror of it is still prevalent today.
Everything is prevalent today, even what you just said about, what we believe in, because everybody, look, it's like, I'm going to be honest here, I've never followed the British narrative, and I'll tell you for why I've never followed it. And it's all because of April the 15th, 1989, where, Hillsborough, and all the lies and the cover-ups and everything else. And, you go, whoa, hang on a minute, this never happened. We never done that. Hang on. And yet they were covering up. And ever since then, I've always questioned anything, any articles, anything about British news, the news, all the media. And this is what you're having today as well. If you don't follow the narrative I've just mentioned about a Palestine flag, you could go to jail. They're actually looking for now someone who had this bloody flag.
Yeah.
And have you seen this man? I think it's shocking So think, and what's going on, you know, in the world.
Yeah.
And the look at, isn't he more, I don't know, it's just becoming a laugh. It's becoming a joke.
I
What we're going to.
I totally, hand on heart, I'm with you with the British media, and you've only got to do a little bit of tuning in to this magical internet and just see who owns the newspapers, and then you get a better glimpse of why we're reading the tosh that goes in 99% of media outlets.
Oh yeah, and well, we all know who owns it, and yet you can't say who owns it. You can't say who owns all the entertainment business. You can't come out and say, "Oh well, it's this group of people," because you'd either get called a racist or a something hater. And we're
Yeah.
not like that. We do.
No,
You've got to be careful what we say.
I think this is something that in history you've mentioned time and time again with legal issues, crimes, with wrong convictions, and then with obviously the horrors of so-called world events, which are engineered to fit a script, rather like Hillsborough.
Yeah.
And believe me, I feel the utmost anger and upset and sympathy for anyone who's been through that. Knows we lost my cousin, age 18, on Hillsborough, and I've watched his mum and dad over all these years, and his sisters and his brother and the family on a wider level crumble every time the lies get bigger. Now you multiply that by everyone involved, and then the most harrowing thing is that we're still nowhere near someone saying, "Sorry, yeah, we did." It's back to Cecil. When I asked you the question weeks ago about did Cecil ever get a comeuppance, and you said no. Lived his life in luxury.
Oh, he stole all the land.
Yeah.
He stole the lands off the Catholics. There's a good quote here. Look at this comment, I'm sorry, by JK. And he says, facts, Frank. Anyone, I'm speaking facts, he's saying. Anyone who doesn't have the same mindset as them will be treated harshly. Scousers, Punjabis, the Irish, the Turks, and the list goes on and on and on. And it does. Because don't remember, I always get mixed up with this pub's name, albeit I've been in it loads of times. Is it the Pig and Whistle or the Pen and Wig? I'm not quite so sure. On the one on Chapel Street.
Chapel
Street. Right. Now, remember the sign there and a dad, and they told her to take it down. And they always had a sign outside. I'm not talking about present day. I'm talking about when it first opened. And a dad, no blacks, no dogs, no Irish. In that order.
Yeah.
In that order.
Yeah.
If you could imagine, see, I'll do this next week. I'll do it about the Irish, because I've got papers here, and it'll surprise you how we greeted the Irish, Liverpool people.
No, I've heard many.
1847, when the influx of the Irish after the 1845 famine, how we greeted them.
Yeah, that was in part my mum's side of the family. That's where we come from, and we feel strongly with that. My dad's side was from Scotland, but and we lived in what was regarded as a safe house on Wright Street, Scotland Road.
Yes.
And then, you know, times change, or what we would call a settlement happens, and we come in, and this is the great irony of everything that's going on at the moment in the media. We are all immigrants. I am.
Yeah.
You are. We are all immigrants. Wherever you are on the globe, we're all immigrants.
Of
You
course.
know, the royal family, the British establishment, immigrants, German.
Yeah. Well, that's who they are. Now, don't forget, they were Battenbergs, and the First World War, they had to change the name. Well, Mountbatten changed it from Battenberg to Mountbatten, and we changed it to Windsor, the House of Windsor.
Also, yeah, the
So
castle.
it was German,
Yeah.
and this is what it was about: German and Russian.
Well, this goes back to what you're saying about those that the victors always write the script. So the victors write the script or the book, and we all abide by the book because it's got to be the truth. Because the winners wrote it. So there's no winners, and there's an awful lot of losers, and it's an easy bucket to stir. Every so often, immigrants coming in, and I know the Irish got that, as well as the Italians, as well as the Germans, the Chinese coming into Liverpool, because it was stirred up.
Well, we got called, from the Italian side, and we got called wops. Now, wops came about. Funny enough, it was Ellis Island, because this was the gateway. Liverpool was the gateway to the New World, which was America, as you know.
Yeah.
And all the migrants, set sail to here, got here. They got, whatever means of transport they got to Liverpool to sail to America.
Yeah.
And what had happened, Anthony, when they got to Ellis Island, there was queues of them. There was loads there was thousands of them. And, by the time, I went up, say, to the custom, have you got your papers? Where's your papers or your passport? Where are they? I've got no papers. I've got that. So they'd send me over to the corner, but not just me. Thousands, get over there. And they wanted people with papers or passports to come and say. So what they did, they sent to Liverpool, they telegraphed Liverpool and said, can you do something? All these people are coming over from your city to here, and it's just nonsense. Can you do something? Because we need people, if they've got papers or passports or something, can you, sort them out? So what we did, what our customs did, we got labels that you put on luggage, and on those labels, they put WOP without papers or passport, so they said, you wear that when you get off the ship of LSI, when you get off in America, and just go over to the custom, right? So obviously, yes, everyone who had no papers, from adults to children, so they went there like that. So then it was, especially in America, after a while, it was the Italians, mainly the Italians, who were called wops. It became derogatory. Those dirty, swarthy wops, meaning the Italians. But it's also spread here. When my uncle Dominic Valenti, Don Valenti, he went over to America, boxer. He went over, he had 7 fights, won 6 and drew 1. And the Madison Square Garden. And the Americans loved them. The Americans, the New Yorkers, loved me Uncle Dom, my great Uncle Dom. And you know what they called? They gave him a nickname, the Liverpool Wop. He was called the Liverpool Wop. So, but it became derogatory. The word Wop, and it was just associated with the Italian community.
Yeah.
So it's like anything else. But the Irish were treated abominably here in this country by everybody. And I'm talking about from politicians to the ordinary citizens, and not just Liverpool. It was all over the country that they were treated terribly. The Irish, they were like subhuman.
Yeah.
It's like the Palestinians today. They're like subhuman, to people, to certain race of people. They're subhuman then. And this is the way it was. It's like the indigenous and American native. They're still, subhuman too. These, Americans, because they still live on reservations.
Yeah.
Like the Aborigines. The Aborigines, in Australia.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's just terrible. And that's the way it is. This is the way everything is about everything. But as we know, if you don't follow the narrative, if you don't like the narrative that's being said, and you totally go against it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, we have it on a daily basis when dare we say democracy or socialism should try and raise its head, then we're all demons from outer space who just...
John Lennon. Look at John Lennon.
Yeah.
Great activist, peace. Give peace a chance. For God's sake, give peace a chance. Not wars. He was a great intellect, John Lennon, not just a great songwriter, he was a great voice for activism.
Yeah,
for
it's
peace.
a simple thing. Just to say, we're talking about war now, we're talking about Palestine, and if it's not Palestine, it's somewhere else. There's, we go into people like the Rothschilds who make money on every single battle on this planet. You think, what?
Well, yeah. Let's just go through a few things here. Let's see. Mark Kenny says, great show tonight, Frank and Anthony, including Jason. Take care. See you next Monday. Oh, that's nice.
Cheers,
and, Mark Simons, anyone know where the immigrant registry is from Man Island to Ellis Islands, as US tourists coming off cruise ships would like to see this historical data and check their own family names? I was going, as I mentioned, didn't I, to you, Anthony?
Yeah.
I wanted to do a documentary about the immigrants or the migrants coming through Liverpool and going over to Ellis Island, which would have been absolutely wonderful. Yeah. Ken Dodd told me to do it, Ken. And then Ken died a couple of weeks later. He said, and, it was a sad thing. But yeah, I do, Mark. I know where it is because they should get hold of me. I brought a load of, I remember these Americans, and I did exactly what Mark Simons is asking there, about immigrant registry from Man Island. And I actually said, yeah, this is where your ancestors sailed from. There was a few Chinese, there was a few like Irish descents and Italian descents in the group that I was taking around, and they couldn't believe it. I'm actually quoted, which I'm very proud of. you know, if they're doing an essay or a dissertation or whatever,
Yeah.
and when they're given the sources, they actually name me, because here's the quote that they use. Liverpool was the Ellis Island of Europe.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
my quote. And people use that quote, you know, when they're doing
Yeah.
these essays and dissertations and theses.
Yeah.
So they really use my name, you know, as a source.
Yeah.
How about that?
Well, it feels like the Ellis Island. It
Yeah.
standing on the waterfront, you get that deep sense of history.
Yeah.
You're walking in the footsteps.
Yeah. Well, we all, yeah. My kid is saying, he's off for Frank and Anthony doing a Ken's odd. Stay on till 2.
I'm with it.
He's a whopper, isn't he? And Norman says, I know it's not footy show, but TNT coverage of red card given to Liverpool opponents sums up the bias against Liverpool as a whole. If it had been a red for our players, they would say, get over it. Absolutely. Absolutely. And he carries on by saying, Norman, Ken's odd. Did he, Frank? No, Doddy. Andy, it's the last one next week before Christmas, right? So you'll join me, won't you? Yes.
I would love to. I'll have my hat on with me, you know, and me. Yeah, I'd love to join you, Frank. Yeah. Yeah.
And what I'm going to do next week, I'll be doing a couple of things actually. I'll be doing the Christmas truce, First World War.
Yeah.
I'll be doing that. And
Yeah.
I'll also be talking about Charles Dickens.
Okay.
So it'll be a little haunting thing for next week, if you don't mind.
I would be well up for that, Frank. Yeah. Thank you.
Right. And then, you know, obviously we'll break for the Christmas. And I'll be meeting up, me and Francine will be meeting up with you and Lainey, you know,
Well,
a couple of other people as well, most probably. So
let's hope so. We'll have a talk.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll see you next week.
Thanks, Frank.
Thank you so much, Anthony, for keeping me company. And it's a big thank you as well to Gerard Gilligan. He was fascinating, wasn't he, really?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, deep space.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at that. Norma says, Anthony is great. Frank is not bad either. Thanks a lot, Norman.
He is Norman. He's the gaffer.
Oh yeah. No, they not me. We're all in the same boat. And all as I've got to say is, all you football fans, I've got the show on tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, starting at 8. We'll be discussing loads on the football show tomorrow night. You know, the Liverpool top of the league, obviously. Can we stay there? That'll be discussed. We'll be discussing Darwin Núñez as well. And it should be a great show because they have great guests on, and we have great comments as well. Some of the chats, some of the lads on the chat, they come out with some fantastic comments, and you know, we discussed them. So let's hope that it should be a good show tomorrow night. And I hope to have J.K. Kismet. Oh, there he is. There, look at that. J.K. Kismet on tomorrow if his mic's fixed, because he's always. Norman says, Frank is brilliant. No, I'm not. I'm just one of you. I'm just one of you, lads. I'm just Anthony. And, you know, we're all the same. Peace, people. You never walk alone. United Sunday. Come on, says J.K. And I hope to have you on tomorrow night if your mic is okay, J.K. Okay, with George Scott and Vase of Flowers. No, Vase of Flowers is not on tomorrow. Marios Manzos. and we'll start the football show tomorrow, 8 o'clock, and I won't be late. I really won't be late, and it's just for me to thank the sponsors of the Frank Carlyle Show, which is Gap Painting Services. As I said, if you're at OAP or you work for the National Health, you get great discounts. You really do. And there's the thing there. There's the number 079 862 86357. And there it is there. They're all fully time served lads, fully insured, brilliant workers. I'm not just saying that, honestly. They're all brilliant. And don't forget, if you're doing nothing tomorrow night and you're not looking at the football show, get along to the oldie up there in Aintree. Free Xmas buffet. It's everything. There's raffles, you name it. There's bands on. There's everything. Meet your friends, meet old friends, meet new friends, meet everybody, and just have a good time for the Christmas get together. That's brilliant. And as Norman says, all I want for Xmas is the league title. So most probably will be seeing him on the football. Anthony, thank you so much for keeping me company tonight. Thank you. And I've just got to thank Jason as well for producing the show.
Absolutely.
He's good, Jason. He gets everything in place for me. And you. And thank you to the most important people. It's not Anthony or me or Gerard. It's you out there. It's you. Because without you out there, there'd be no Frank Carlyle Show. Whether it's history, whether it's football. Thank you so much. And I've just got to answer this. Any chance of you getting down to Jurgen's for the United game, Frank? I'll let you know tomorrow. I've got to see Francine first. I'll let you know tomorrow. Mark, if you tune in, I'll definitely let you know. And I'll be having the football show, not on Thursday this week. I'll be having it on Friday. Okay. And but I'll let you know. I'll let you know for the United game. And as I said, it's thank you to you out there. It's thank you to my great friend there, Anthony Brown. And I'll see you tomorrow night. And if not, it's all you history people, I'll see you next Monday with Anthony and the truce and everything else that'll go with the history show. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Brilliant.